Welcome to the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast. Tune in every Thursday as we share inspirational stories from the world's greatest creators, entrepreneurs, and go-getters about how they've turned life's lemons into lemonade. And now, here's your host of Lemonade Stand Stories, Daryn Tufts.
What is going on, guys? This is Daryn Tufts with the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast, and I'm here. Oh gosh, I'm nervous. Obviously, my mom even told me, don't be nervous on today's podcast, but I can't help it because in front of me are two incredible legends that have shaped the way of cinema. Actually, for me, it is true because they're local celebrities that I really look up to. I still do look up to them, and I always will because Daryn is 6'6" or 7". We're not entirely sure on the height right now. But we've got Dave Nibley and we've got Daryn Tufts in front of me, and so you would recognize Dave and Daryn from movies such as like Singles Ward, Best 2 Years, and then other movies that we can't really talk about because they're in certain areas that we're not supposed to talk about, you know. But no, we're super grateful, and it's interesting because Dave and I have this connection of his younger brother, Phil.
Yes.
And Phil and I went to high school together, and we've been buddies for a long time. And so when I realized actually that you were brothers, like you guys were brothers, I remember being like so like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is incredible. Like you're Dave's, you're Dave's brother, Phil.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was just awesome, like to see you guys on the screen. And Daryn, funny enough, I don't know if you remember this, but we actually met like some of the Salt Lake singles parties,
way back in the day.
Way back in the day.
I have vague memories, because I remember as we started getting to know each other in the film industry, there was like, I couldn't pinpoint exactly where we met because I felt like I know Daryn from where?
Right.
Around.
Yeah. No, that's what it was. And I think it's just like the film circle in Utah is it's really small. And if you're in it for a while, you'll get to start meeting everybody and it's awesome.
Ships in the night.
But what's cool is, and I really want to talk about this, you guys in a sense kind of paved like, and I don't want to just say Mormon cinema because you've done way more than that, but in a sense you have paved a lot of the movies that we've seen locally here, like Singles Ward, Best 2 Years. Those are two really iconic movies in this valley, in this area. So I'd like to talk a little bit about like how you guys got your beginnings as actors, producers.
And I think it's fair to say like, we were part of movies that paved the way. We didn't pave the way.
Let's make that clear.
We were part of projects that
kind of stumble into projects that ended up being, like you say, kind of iconic.
Yeah.
And sometimes I even, I have to kind of pinch myself to say, wow, of all the things I could have stumbled into, I'm so glad. These opportunities and the timing in our lives was right to kind of.
I can hardly believe it sometimes when I think how fortuitous some of the timing and situations I just feel like I fell into in that way, because I really do like that. Feel like I just stumbled into that very fortuitously. Yes, for sure.
So let's talk about fortuitous moments. You would say, because whether you said like you're spearheading it or it's just kind of fortuitously happened. Things tend to happen to people that like have like a desire to like go do some good or go do and create things. We were having breakfast just yesterday, I think, a couple days ago. Yeah. And we were discussing like how some of these things even came to pass for you guys. So let's talk about Singles Ward and then we'll talk about Best 2 Years. But Daryn, you were talking a little bit to me about like how you even got into like improv and all those things at BYU. Can we talk a little bit about that right now? And
I mean, I grew up in Southern California in the 80s, and being LDS growing up, I really kind of had a worldview that like, you can't really make it in show business. And back then the gateways were different. There was no internet, there was sort of just, you go to Hollywood, you try to make it in show business. And I felt like I wanted to have a career that was solid and I made money. And so I never really, thought I could follow my bliss in that way because I just didn't feel like that was my path. And it was when I got to BYU in the 90s that I joined the Garyn's comedy troupe, which was a comedy troupe. It was BYU's official comedy troupe at the time. And I can kind of charter my course to Singles Ward and really beyond from that moment, because it was the moment I really felt like I found my way into a creative community of performing artists that were just, and these were people that many of them were, we're all still friends, and they were just incredible performers back then. And I just kind of was able to stumble into that. With Singles Ward, I feel like, by the time that came out on the heels of a movie called God's Army, which at the time I was blown away that movie exists. That movie was a movie about Mormon missionaries, and it was a serious dramatic film, written and directed by Richard Dutcher. I was blown away because I felt like there were Mormons on film and they were being taken seriously and they were the subjects of a movie. Like all of that blew me away. All of that, that this could even exist. And so and that was sort of a roundabout way to get into the singles ward, because I didn't really have ambitions to be an actor per se. I was launching my career as a writer, really trying to at the time. And I had met Kurt Hale because I had just heard of the project, and Kurt, Kurt was launching it. I'd heard that somebody was making a movie called The Singles Ward, and I believed in that idea. I loved that idea.
Yeah. The title's just
I just did a vision for what
it nails it. It nails my life right now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the crazy thing about that movie is that movie came out 20 years ago to this month.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It has been so long now. And when I met Kurt, it was just because like I had just written a screenplay on my own, just as sort of an exercise in trying to become a writer. And somebody said, oh yeah, my brother-in-law, he also he has a screenplay he's developing, and it's called The Singles Ward, and it was written by John Moyer. And that's how I met Kurt socially, and I just started talking about the script, and I felt like I just met the guy who was making a movie that he eventually invited me to audition to be a part of, based on comedy sports, which I did after the Garins, which led to, it just felt like, oh yeah, like I'd never thought I would be in film and work in that industry, because I was going to go to BYU and pursue a different path. And I can't believe how well all that just sort of aligned, that I had opportunities to work in film as I was getting started in that way.
Yeah. Amazing.
No, it's so wild, because I remember, I never really got into, I was very shy growing up, super duper shy. But when I was like in 7th grade, we had like a family friend that like did like extra work. That's all it was. But the idea of like being in a movie suddenly sparked something in me that I'm like, what? Here in Utah? Like there were cameras?
Possible?
Is that even a thing? So I was blown away. I never thought that could happen. But then I remember like in 9th grade, I decided to take a drama class. And did you ever take drama in high school?
Yeah.
So were you with
Junior
Mr.
high.
Brower?
Mr. Brower,
right? That was Mr. Brower for me, right? And you took it in junior high, right? So I took drama, and I was like, oh my gosh. And like all of a sudden, this really shy, insecure kid, when I got up on stage, I mean, I remember the very first time going up on stage and performing, being like so nervous until people started laughing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I made a joke that made people laugh. And then this weird confidence started building up inside of me. And I'm like, could I do that? Again, though, I was like, kind of like you in the thinking, how is it even possible in Utah I could even do something like this? But I did. And then all of a sudden, like all these like friends of ours, like McLean Nelson, for example, and McLean and I graduated the same year. And so we all like did these films together. And then I don't know if you know Ben Gurley, and he did like Pride and Prejudice, and and so I was like, okay, all these little movies and stuff are coming out, and I remember like
I was good friends with McLean all through that era too.
All through that era,
so excited. I mean, I met McLean.
Yeah,
I was 25 years old, and he was 18 years old, and we were at the very first comedy sports audition.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Which I was sort of helping run. I didn't start it. I was there with the original owner, kind of helping organize the first audition. And I specifically remember, I didn't know if this was going to be anything. I didn't know if she was going to be able to launch this off the ground. I knew that kid was going places. Like we just both knew, well, that kid was just born to born to do this.
McLean is incredible, and it's hilarious because he always claims that he got me my beginnings, my start, because like my first theatrical release was something that McLean did. It was like a home video that we shot at our high school that aired at our auditorium that I was in, and he's like, dude,
theatrical.
It was a theatrical release, yeah. And he will always claim that. I'm like, all right, you own that one, but it was interesting because like, so I never saw God's Army. I saw the second one, which I really liked, but I remember Singles Ward, and then like there was the RM and Home Teachers. They all had like a certain brand of comedy, and it was kind of like. Sometimes a little slapsticky, like, really fun and everything. And then The Best 2 Years comes out, and it was a totally different, it wasn't slapsticky, but it was really fun. And it was really, and I really appreciated it because it was like very subtle humor.
Yeah.
And, they had like really heartfelt moments. And I don't even remember when I watched that, but I remember watching it and just being like, so touched and blown away, right? Yeah, and it was awesome. And Dave, I had seen you in some stuff because I'd seen like the restoration videos and all those things.
Yeah.
And so I saw you in this, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is great. So talk to me a little bit about how that came to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. We kind of have similar journeys a little bit on the way. Similar, like I started, I got Mr. Brower. Actually, I don't think I ever took a drama class, but I auditioned for plays, and I remember I got cast to play a villain in a great comedy called The Foreigner.
Okay,
I had like the Southern accent and be smarmy, and it was really so fun. And I caught that bug. And my family, I'd had aunts and uncles who had gone to LA. They were super talented actors, and made a go of it out there. Had some success. We'd see them on TV every now and then, and like shows like the Golden Girls, Magnum PI, you know, stuff like that. We're like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And so I always thought, oh, that would be so cool. And then I started doing stand-up comedy in high school. So there's a place called Johnny B's Comedy Club.
Dude, of course. Yeah, of course. Johnny B's. Amazing.
And of course, like old people.
I remember going to that place and just being like, it lit me up. I'm like, I cannot believe this exists here in Utah County. I thought it was the most fun thing. And I said, I'm going to do that. I set a goal. I think I was probably 17, and I kept chickening out. I wanted to go to open mic night. I kept chickening out. So eventually I told everybody I knew that I was going to go and be there at a certain time. Like my teacher's quorum, everybody's quorum. Friends at school, family. And it forced me. I was working at a burger place, Stevenette's Malt Shop at the time, and I would come up with my little comedy bit ideas, and I'd write them on a burger wrapper and throw over here as I'm working. And I had a stack of burger wrappers. So I went through and I refined it into an act. I went to the church and I got a mic stand and a mic. Yeah. And in my garage, I like put this act together and practiced for hours. And finally went and did it. Probably because the audience was stacked with everybody I knew. It went well.
That's amazing.
So, and it was so fun. Well, I mean, like you said, when you get that audience reaction, it like feeds your soul.
Yeah, you're like, I'm like, I don't even know how these endorphins are firing. But it's amazing. It's an incredible feeling.
There's a scene in Rocket Man, that musical, that I feel like kind of illustrates that, where he's playing the piano and he starts to float and the whole audience starts to float. It's that metaphoric sense of like everyone's connected at once, you all sort of feel it.
It really is a feeling unlike anything else. Yeah. And so I got kind of addicted to that, loved it, and just kept developing my act. Did stand up for a long time, and then went on my mission. And I remember being on my mission, and we would show church movies all the time as teaching resources, right? Yeah. And I remember
did you guys ever show My Heavenly Father's Plan?
Oh yeah.
I did not realize that was Sean Stevens till like way later in life. And I'm like, what, Sean? You're kidding me. Anyway,
oh my God. All of those on the way home.
On the way home. Yeah, of course.
There's so many. Yeah. And I remember setting a goal. I wrote it in my journal. Like, I want to be in a church movie when I'm done with this mission. That's what I want to do. Yeah. So I eventually did. I got home, got set up with an agent, started auditioning, and got cast in The Restoration, which was basically the remake of the first Vision at the time, and which then went on to they also shot with the same cast, Joseph Smith, Prophet of the Restoration, which was at the Legacy Theater and at Temple Visitor Centers all over the place. I played Alvin Smith in that, and that was such an amazing thing for me. Like a return missionary getting to do this, like it was reaching my goal. And so that was happening, and then I got cast. I auditioned for The Best 2 Years, and Daryn and I were
both auditioned.
We both auditioned in that group. And I remember callback after callback. And Daryn was always there. I was always there. I remember seeing Kirby and the other guys. And
I thought I had a shot for a while, because it was one of the rare times in my life that I felt like I was having good auditions, and I felt like I can do that. This isn't a part I really understand. Maybe I can, you know, and I was like really feeling it.
Well, and I mean, we were both going for the same
role.
Same role.
And from what we understand, it got down to basically the two of us.
I know it's close. I don't know if it's the two. I know I was in the running.
But eventually I got it, which
couldn't have worked out it's exactly right.
But that movie, of all, I wasn't really used to reading scripts yet. I was reading it and I'm like, I think this is good. I don't know. I'm like, I'm no expert, but And then we went to Holland and shot it, and it was, on a shoestring, but the people who were involved were super talented and creative and so dedicated to making a good film. And the film turned out to be really something we were all really proud of.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, I was the same. I saw God's Army when I got off my mission, and I was like, I was smiling the whole time I'm watching this film. Like, I just lived this experience. Like, I cannot believe they're making a movie about this. And then Singles Ward, I'm like, I'm in heaven. A comedy about Mormons that like hits all these nails on the head, and we all get these inside jokes, and I mean, it was so much fun. And then Best 2 Years was kind of another form of comedy, a little bit of an evolution.
It was, and that's what I loved about it. And it's funny because we were having this discussion, but I just did a movie with Casey Clyde, who's like the lead in Best 2 Years, and we were having a conversation from his perspective how things went. But it was really cool because what I loved about the Best 2 Years was, yes, it is a story about missionaries and their culture, but it was a very real story, and it was like, people having like their real actual things. And it's kind of told in a way through Kirby's perspective, but you start seeing like how these almost like missionaries, they almost become brothers, right? And they like help each other out during their challenges and whatnot. And it's fun because every single character had their quirks and stuff, but I appreciated it because it was not as slapsticky. It was a little bit more serious, and yet it had like that heart. And it kind of inspired me to be like, okay, those are the type of films that I want to make, on the road.
My dad, who is a screenwriter and director and has worked in movies. I worked in movies all while I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was in Footloose at 8
Dude,
years old.
come
Our
on.
family was,
So who's your dad?
His name's Paul Nibley.
Paul Nibley.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he taught screenwriting at UVU for a while.
Okay.
Anyway, when he saw, he's fairly critical of, LDS cultural kitsch, which there is plenty of that. And when he saw the Best 2 Years, I was nervous. I'm like, what's he going to say?
Yeah.
And I remember him saying that was just what it needed to be. He said it wasn't preachy.
Oh.
And there were like testimony moments in there, but I don't think you ever feel like
you're being preached to.
Yeah, they don't hit you over the head. You're looking at this person's experience, and it seems so authentic and real. Like when Casey bears his testimony, it's powerful, but at the same time kind of subtle. And it's like you just see he's realizing what he is doing there, and you don't feel like it's being forced on you. It's just natural and authentic, which
it was awesome. Yeah,
I love that.
When did that movie come out? What year?
2004.
2004. Okay, so here is my fandom moment. I don't even think you remember this, dude. I know you don't remember this, but I remember it vividly. So I hadn't met you yet, I don't think, when this movie had come out. But 2004, my mom and I think my sister, we all took a trip to India. Okay, and
makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes complete sense. And so. But before we went, the day that we were gonna go, we went to Village Inn and had like some food because we're like, I don't know how the food's gonna be on the airport. And you walk out, and I remember I introduced myself to you, and then I was like on cloud nine. I'm like, I'm not gonna sleep on the plane. I just met Elder Johnson.
No way.
Best 2 years. Yeah, dude, it was the best.
So wait, how old would you have been?
Ah, man,
2004.
23 probably.
Oh my god.
23, dude.
Too old to do that.
Yeah.
Too old to feel bad.
Wait. Yeah, way too old to be starstruck, and yet I really was.
Yeah, that's
like one of my first celebrities.
I was 29 when I filmed that. So
yeah,
I was
he must have been like
old to be playing a missionary, but
no, it's fine.
That is crazy.
Isn't that so funny?
Love that.
Yeah, no, dude. I know.
That.
And it was funny because like a couple years later, I acted in a missionary movie, and I was like but my mind was like so cheesy and fun. But it was interesting because you start these things, these journeys, and then you end up like having like such a camaraderie with the people that you work with, right?
Well, even like the parallels are so funny. Like you talk about how when you discovered Johnny B's and how you just couldn't believe that was here, in Provo, and how you chickened out, because it's that imposter syndrom, right? I think that everyone who wants to do something in life that they feel like they're kind of following their bliss, they kind of feel internally, I can do this. Yeah. That sense of like, they're all going to laugh at me. No, I can't do it. It's that, and I feel like that's for a lot of people a necessary kind of threshold. You have to kind of fake it till you feel it, you know. And it's so funny because I remember feeling the same way about the Garins, and it was a bit of the opposite strategy. Like I couldn't believe this existed at BYU, and I didn't like dare think that like, oh, I could be on this. It felt like, yeah, sure, you know. And I felt like it sounded so stupid. And they had an open audition, and I remember the only way I could get myself to go is I told nobody.
Oh, wow.
That way, nobody would know my shame. You know, like nobody would know, like Daryn's at this like audition. And I even had a more specific plan when I walked in. I said, okay, I'm going to ask if they want any pre-written material or any experience. If any of those answers is yes, I'm not only going to leave, I'm going to quietly sneak out so they don't know I'm leaving because I don't want them to tell me to stay. You know, like it was literally like that was how easily I was going to walk out the door. And I met Lincoln Hoppe. Yeah, dude, like, no, this is fun. We're all going to goof off. Come on, you know. Yeah. Thank goodness he did.
Dude, you know, it's interesting. Like I love moments like that, like the fake it till you make it, because the more you the more you do this industry, the more you're like, oh, I don't think anyone knows what they're doing with anything, you know?
Not really, yeah.
Just say yes.
Just say and you're gonna figure it out. I was at this audition. So I moved to LA for like 10 years and worked on some pretty cool shows. But there was this HBO show that I was auditioning for. It wasn't Silicon Valley, it was a different show. And I walked in and it was just, it was one of those, it's a producer session. So producer sessions, they have everybody there, right? Yeah. It's like all the producers, everyone, and they're just like looking at you to act and perform. I'm like, okay, well, here we go. You know, so I'm doing my thing. And they, and the director was so sweet and awesome. And she said, hey, we loved your audition and stuff. And she said, you're playing a teacher, so we want you to teach us all something. Go. And I'm like, and there was no prep time. It was just right then and there, right? I'm like, great. And I'm like, and I'm just like this is like what is going to come off the top of my head. That is what I'm going to teach them, you know? I'm like, I'm going to teach you guys how to all do magic tricks. Because there was a time in my life when I was either going to be an actor or a magician because I love doing magic tricks. And they're like, oh, magic? I'm like, yeah. In fact, let me get a participant. And then all of a sudden, a thing started taking life of its own that I wasn't even aware of, you know, because it wasn't something that I really prepped for. Yeah. And so I love that idea of like, sometimes when life comes, you just have to like say, okay, now is the time for us to shine, you know?
That was exactly Singles War for me. It was like, I had no business pursuing that opportunity, but it was like, I need to pretend like I do.
Yeah, like you pretend like you do. And I love that. So I want to talk a little bit now about how you two partnered up, because I know, you know, acting has been a thing that you guys have done, but you also are excellent writers and directors. And I was very honored and like very fortunate to be a part of a film that you guys both produced and created called We Love You, Sally Carmichael. And I love to talk about that. But how did you two
Chris Gorham cast you in it, so we should give him credit for directing and casting you in it.
Let's give Chris Gorham credit us for it. And I mean, the thing was, Chris was very, very awesome and kind, and like, I mean, the guy from Other Side of Heaven, you know, was casting. It's incredible.
You thought you thought Elder Johnson was something.
I know. I mean, you know, we'll see. Elder Grove, Elder Johnson, they're the same. Now, how did you two form like a partnership? And because wasn't it before Carmichael?
We had known each other for years, just casually, socially, and in really kind of fun, meaningful ways, common friends and different things, you know, and, you know, long story short, but we had actually worked together, and, you know, I mean, and we were mutual admirers of her, I think, in the space of like, I didn't know you professionally in terms of advertising and marketing, right? But I knew you from acting, and I really liked you. When I directed My Girlfriend's Boyfriend, which was a feature film that I was a first time director, and I wrote the script, and I was just really, you know, I felt like I had my own little Atlas globe on top of me, and it was really important to nail everything. And that was one role. We were bringing in people from Hollywood to play the main roles, and I remember casting Dave sort of like, oh yeah, we need someone like Dave Nibley in that role, so we know we'll do a good job. Like there was, you know, like I really had a
little did you know that.
Little did I know.
Dave Nibley was available.
Nibley was available for that. Yeah. But so we had worked together, just sort of like you and I do. Like we were friends, and you know, and I didn't. And for a while, I was interested in partnering with someone professionally, but I knew other copywriters. I was primarily a copywriter. Even with all the performing and improv, I realized, I'm good at finding the quick joke because I'm more of a writer than an actor and a performer. And my primary career has been copywriting, and in movies, it's been screenwriting. You know, and so you know, and when Dave, it was incredible director, incredible visual artist, and we, you know, that was sort of, I mean, you're the one who actually approached me, so maybe I'll let you know.
It's interesting because, you know, so many people, often when I'm approached, people recognize me from something, Best of Years usually. Yeah. You know, it's just like, wow, you're an actor, as in your career. Yeah. And I'm like, no, definitely not. Because, you know, I mentioned that my family, there were a number of really talented actors, aunts and uncles who went out to LA to try and make it, and just remember how much they struggled. You go from being a big fish in a small pond here,
yes,
to going out to LA and you're
like
a
small
guppy
fish
in a ginormous pond.
Yes,
and they struggled, and I remember seeing that growing up. And when I started acting, I remember specifically saying, I am not going to make this my day job. This is going to be a hobby,
right?
And I'm not going to make my family depend on my acting for a living.
Yeah,
because it's such a difficult industry to really be successful in. So totally. I always, I get asked to go, and
if you're serious about it and want to do it, like you've got to take it serious and pursue it fully. That's how you sort of I understood that. Like I can't do that. I'm not. Yeah.
That like you went out to LA for 10 years.
Huge commitment.
There's so many people that have done that, and all the respect in the world, like follow that dream. And I was like, I want to find a way to follow the dream and have some stability and predictability as well.
Yes.
So I did that. I get asked to go speak to, I've done this a number of times at my kids' junior high on like career day.
Yeah.
Talk to us about being an actor. And I basically say,
I
don't know if you want to make it your full-time thing. There's ways to do it.
Well, we're that kind of actor. I mean, real actors don't act like that. Real actors act. Real actors are actors. Yeah.
Right.
So I talked about, what I've done is figured out a way to kind of scratch that creative itch in a way that, like I said, gives me some predictability. So I've always been right brain creative, as is Daryn, and I'm sure you are too. And, so it wasn't just acting and comedy that caught my eye that I loved. It was, art, design, that kind of thing.
And you're an excellent graphic design artist, because I remember I was in a movie called Abandoned Mind. I think you designed the poster for that.
I did the poster,
right?
Yeah, the Mind. That's so funny.
And I remember being like, oh my gosh, like this poster is amazing. And then they ended up using something else, which was like terrible. I'm like, why didn't you go back to Dave's? Dave's was amazing,
so funny.
Yeah.
But so that was something that I always did, and I knew that I could, make a career out of that was going to be a little more solid. So I did that, and worked for other people, but then eventually started my own thing, which gave me the flexibility to like, hey, if a movie pops up, I'm gonna go off and make the movie. I'm kind of my own boss, and Daryn was the same, doing his own thing. I was a partner in an agency. An advertising and marketing agency called Rain. Daryn would come in, and his wife worked there, and we'd use him as a freelance copywriter, and all those projects always went so well. And I eventually sold out of that company and wanted to do just my own thing. And so I just had my own little one-man agency, and eventually, after working with Daryn on a couple projects, I was like, boy, we work well together.
Yeah.
And approached him and said, why don't we form a partnership? And so we did, and we formed an agency, creative services agency called Flinch.
Flinch, right? And I love your tagline, right?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, we made you flinch.
We made you, Flinch.
One of the things that made a lot of sense to me at the time too is that my whole career, I had this sort of dual career where my primary job, and I was self-employed, just sort of spinning these wheels on my own, but I did advertising, marketing, copywriting. That was my primary career, and I worked with clients. And then I was always sort of building a show, pursuing show business on the side is something I loved doing, which primarily meant writing screenplays and making movies. And there wasn't a grand plan. It was just sort of, here's what I do as my career, and here's sort of how, what I love doing. And I'll do both for as long as I can. And when Dave approached me, he was doing the same thing. And not only were we a good fit, but it seemed like, wow, we could actually have that same goal with Flinch to say, and while we're servicing clients and living our career, or working with our careers, what project are we building together? What creative thing are we building? That was like, we could do that together, and that was really exciting for me.
Yeah, we're like
so
movie
awesome.
guys. Like, what do we do? What do we have on the back burner? And that's how Sally Carmichael came to be.
It was like half written at the time. I had this, I've been kind of nursing it along.
I remember when you called me actually, and you're like, hey, there's this role, and I'd love for you to read for it, and I remember getting it. Well, I was super duper flattered because, like Dave being available, I was shockingly available as an actor in LA. I was like, yes, please.
Whatever.
And
just hot off Silicon Valley. So but thank you.
Please. No, anyway, I got the script. I remember, and I was like really excited about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need some coaching. So Bart Johnson, you guys know Bart, right?
Yeah.
He's a dear friend of mine. I'm like, Bart, I need you to help me run this audition, because I always run Bart's auditions, and when we'd always go to each other, I'd always go to his house and do it. So he's like, yeah, come up. So I go to his house. I'm like, hey, I need you to just help me out. And I bombed, dude. It was terrible. It was just the worst, you know? And Bart is super cool and gracious and kind and everything, you know? But he's like, yeah, you know, Daryn, you might want to like, you know, learn your lines. I'm like, I know. And I just got in my head. And I think it was just because I was so wanting to work on the movie and so wanting to do it that I could not get my lines down.
And you know what's so funny about that? This is a classic thing where it's like, you were just like, it was yours to like there were people auditioning, but I had already shown your reel to Chris. That's why I was like, I think, you know, it was like, as long as you know, didn't come in and start swearing profanities and take your shirt off, it was going to be, you know, it's probably going to be fine. And like the stress of it is so funny when
it was just so funny. Cause like, I remember being so nervous. And so I went home. Like, and I'm just like, what am I doing? Why am I even an actor? You know? What am I doing?
Leo DiCaprio.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. You know?
Oh,
so then I know, and so then I like got home. I'm like, okay, just stay calm. It's gonna be okay.
It's that imposter syndrome.
I think Daryn still likes me, so I'm like, I'm not gonna say anything that I just because I did the audition and it was just every single take was terrible. So I ended up like going home, really learning the lines a lot more, and like just like getting it so it's muscle memory. I'm like, Bart, I'm so sorry. I need you to do it again. He's like, yeah, come up. So I go back up.
Yeah.
So then he did it again, and then one of the takes, I'm like, okay, I actually like that one. I'll send it in, and I got it, but I was just like so like. I remember just being so nervous. I'm like, I don't know. And I didn't hear from you guys in forever. I'm like, oh, he must have hated it, you know?
Oh my gosh.
But
well, come on. I mean,
that's so us
how
too,
many
really.
times have we all done that? Like,
I know, dude.
Recorded it so many times. Like, nope, dang it.
I know.
Over and over again.
And then I was even like trying to figure out is there a way I can cut this part of it without realizing that there's a cut, you know? And so, but no, it was just, I remember.
You know what? You nailed it.
No, I appreciate it.
Saw that audition, we're just like, oh my gosh.
She's great.
Perfect.
Yeah, no,
perfect.
It was perfect. And it was such a fun movie, and it was so fun working with you guys. But then when we did the UCCU ads, because I remember I auditioned for like a much smaller role, right? It was like the magician guy.
Yeah.
That's who I auditioned for because that was what was given to me. And then
but there were a lot of tumblers.
I think that would have been perfect for you.
Yeah, you would have been great. There was a lot of tumblers at the time, like we were looking at people from
different things, right? And then all of a sudden, I think Dave, you reached out. You call it, Sharon. We just want to give you a bigger role. I'm like, wait, what? And it was one of those acting like dreams. Like, is this really happening? The guy, my star that I met at Village Inn, is now going to give me. You know, it was just one of those moments.
The UCCU spot.
The UCCU spot. But I remember like and this is what I was going to tell you guys about it. The incredible amount of enjoyment I had. The experience of acting on that was so fun, and I remember there was this moment. I don't even think you remember this, dude, but like there was this moment because the whole thing, you're reading off a teleprompter, right. But there's this moment where there was so many words on the teleprompter that I knew I messed up, and I'm like, oh shoot, I'm like, dude, I need to do this again. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, there's just so many words. And I said something like that. And I remember you saying, like, he's like, I know, Sharon, I know. But it was so genuinely sympathetic that I was like, oh my gosh, like, I just felt so loved that, like, I nailed it the next time. I'm like, dang it, those Flinch guys did it again, you know?
Oh my gosh.
No, dude, Sharon. It was just like these moments, right? But
I have to say, I love your humility. I love your humility because you are giving yourself short shrift. You are so talented. And
you're too kind.
You
like we cast you because you bring great stuff to the spots. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Well, you guys are great, and I love that you did that movie. I want to talk about your newest movie that you're going to do together because it sounds amazing. And Daryn, I remember you telling me about this story, and I was just like, wow, what an interesting part of the Mormon history that I didn't even know anything about.
I kind of believe, like, I mean, I've told people this is the best Mormon history story you've never heard.
Yeah. And it came out
nobody's heard of it.
It came out of, interestingly enough, we had a client who was pitching us on a project that had to do with kind of bringing back the Mormon pageant culture, which has kind of disappeared, you know.
It really has.
It has.
For reasons.
Yeah. For reasons.
But he was talking about that, and he introduced it to us by telling us this story.
From church history from Nauvoo.
From the church history. And I remember when we walked out of that meeting, I was like, okay, this is a cool project, but what I really am interested in is that story. I cannot believe I've never heard that. And I talked to Daryn about it, and I'm like, have you heard that? He's like,
well, he called me on the way home, and like, to be honest, I really cannot stress how little interest I'd have in writing an LDS history film at that point in my life. I just had zero interest in it.
Yeah.
And he called me, he's like, am I crazy, or wouldn't that be an amazing true story movie? And I remember that sinking feeling of, oh no, you're right. This is an incredible idea for a movie. It's so good. And then I kind of feel like, well, okay, so we'll see if we can find a way into it. And it kept feeling like something will knock this down. And it just kept like, oh man,
Well, and so we started brainstorming. How do we tell this story? Because really what it is, ironically, it is the story of the birth of Mormon theater culture,
which is amazing.
It's also simultaneously the story of how the LDS Church became the first religious community in American history to put on a play, to found a theater. That actually happened like 30 or 40 years for any other religion. It's fascinating. And the story is fascinating. The story is really
it all came about in Nauvoo because of the need to pay for the legal defense of Joseph Smith, which would become really a burden on him and his family and a stress to them. Yeah. And they said, we need to help the prophet with this. And the idea they came up with, let's put on a play.
Put on a show.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
And we'll charge seats. We'll make great sets. We'll make this amazing. And so what they did is they put two people together. One guy was a man named Thomas Lynn, who was a fairly well-known stage actor from Philadelphia, which was kind of like the Broadway of the time. Yeah. Joseph Smith put him together, called him to work with a local Nauvoo kid named Hiram Clausen, who Joseph specifically said had this talent for mimicry. Mm-hmm. And he said, you guys get together and figure out how to make this work. And they had to kind of come up with, how do we put together an amazing production that'll get people to come watch it and pay for tickets here in Nauvoo, frontier land Nauvoo. So
they chose and it's just like that's the setup. But they did a show called Pizarro, and Pizarro was the biggest Broadway or musical in America for the past 100 years of the time. Mm-hmm. It was known as a big giant spectacle that critics hated, but audiences loved. It was a musical, it had moving sets, and their idea was, let's put this on in the Masonic Hall. But there was still this, and they had Thomas Lynn, who was a successful actor leading all this, and yet they had the problem of, how are we going to convince people to come see this play? How are we going to actually put butts in the seats? And so, long story short, they ended up approaching Brigham Young, who was really not into any of this, and talked him into making a cameo in the play, where he would come out in the climax dressed as the high priest in flowing red robes with half of the apostles in a choir, and do this
giant headdress,
and it all really happened. And it all really happened. We satirize a lot of it in the movie and have a lot of fun with it, but this really happened in American history.
They got the apostles and
oh my gosh,
to be in this play.
Yeah.
And it was really innovative, these guys never been done before thing at the time, right?
Yeah.
And they had to convince him. Brigham Young was like, and they had to convince him. Yeah. What's really cool is it gave him this incredible love of theater from that point on. Okay. He got this bug, and there's a great quote where he says, if I were tasked of civilizing a cannibalistic race, I would straightway build a theater.
Another great Brigham Young quote.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. He's got great quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's so great. So where are you guys at with the
and the story? I remember Kirby and I wrote it together, and
we should mention Kirby Hayborn.
Yes.
So we've been. We were in the best 2 years together.
Yeah, we love Kirby.
Elder Calhoun, come on.
I mean, come on. He was also on the podcast.
This is the way I'll set it up.
And Singlesword.
Yes.
Anyway, Daryn and I had been working on it. We brought him on board. We've been kind of trying to figure out a way to work together for a while. And Kirby really helped shape the story and figure out a way into it that really worked and it became this really collaborative
We leave
thing.
the LDS leaders back then, Joseph and Brigham. They're all kind of on their pedestals. The movie's not about them. They're historical pedestals. This is about the real saints that birthed LDS theater. And Hiram and Thomas, they're buried in Salt Lake City cemeteries. Like they're our ancestors and pioneers who started all of this. And it just the way into the story that really opened it up is when we realized this is a classic Woody and Buzz story with the famous actor coming in from Philadelphia, played by David Nibley, and the local person keeping it all together, played by Kirby Hayborn, and how they bring this community together and kind of full Monty style put Brigham Young in this play, and it all really happened. And it's just this extraordinary piece of LDS in American history that nobody's heard about.
So we've got, obviously we're excited about it.
Yeah.
And we've got the script written. We already have the main principal
and
roles
it's comedy,
cast.
straight up. It's sweet comedy.
It's a comedy, a period piece comedy, which we haven't seen yet in
LDS,
that's true.
Yeah.
The LDS genre. And so we're in the funding phase right now. Hope to shoot later this summer.
That's amazing.
And then would probably release it first part of the year next year. That's where we are. It's exciting.
No, that's awesome. It's called Pizarro.
Pizarro.
And one of the fun things about it is that we really crafted it. You know, one of the subplots is that there's a romantic storyline between Hiram in real life married somebody named Margaret Clausen Judd, who's known as the Mormon Church's first funny woman. I mean, that's like sounds like I'm making this up, but you can Google that.
Yeah.
You know, and we have so many.
And Lisa Valentine Clark will play her.
Valentine Clark will play her.
She's perfect for that.
So we have a love story with Lisa and Kirby in this movie, and we've already kind of crafted a lot of these roles with some great local actors in mind that we've been workshopping with, and we've been talking with T.C. Christensen along the way. Like, we've really been trying to assemble like what would be the absolute dream team for this, for this movie.
And listen, here's the deal. I mean, I know you guys are like switching things up a lot. I can play Brigham. I'm not. I'm just saying.
We're not trying to be slavish to historical accuracy. So
no, we're not
trying to have fun.
No. It sounds like an amazing movie, and the thing I like about it is taking, because I was expressing to you guys, like, I'm not sure if I'm really interested in making more like Mormon type of cinema, just because everything I've known is like, oh, like, let's tell another version of the Joseph Smith story, let's tell another version of this. But this story is so unique and it's fresh, and it happens to take place during this time.
And I know a lot of people say this, but it is really trying to be like, it's Mormon in that it's about Mormons from Nauvoo.
Yeah.
And that's how it's Mormon. It's like the themes are universal about, friendship and faith, and it's a classic hero's journey, but it's like, it's Mormon in the way that My Big Fat Greek Wedding is Greek, and Fiddler on the Roof, is for Jewish people. Like it just seems like it's
a backdrop.
An outsider's look. Yeah. Well, it's also an outsider's look in at something, true and historical and fun from a group of people who are just like us within that context of history and time and place.
Yeah. That is awesome. Really fun. I would love to help promote it in any way I can. So, and when we're happy to.
Here you are. Thank you.
At the Lemonade Stand. So if ever you're like, hey, we want to talk about this, we're happy to help push it out in whatever capacity.
And there's a part in it for you, Sharon. Come on. Of course.
I mean, come on.
And we're currently fundraising, so that's great. Thank you for offering that.
No, of course. No, absolutely. I think this is a type of movie, this is a type of story that is so fresh and it's so unique, and I would love to see this in the cinema, in the theater, right? Yeah. And it's funny because look, in the movie itself, you guys are trying to how do you get butts and seats so that we can get it going? So hopefully this podcast can help people get butts and seats when they're actually watching the actual movie. You know what I mean?
The title of the movie, the working title, this could change, but I love the working title of it, which is Pizarro.
I think it's a great title.
The mostly true story of the birth of Mormon theater. It has a big long subtitle that kind of explains the whole thing. This is the mostly true story of the birth of Mormon theater.
No, I think it's awesome. It's so great. So I want to switch topics a little bit. The big part of the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast is talking about these amazing, awesome experiences and stories. But in order for you to have a lemonade story, you have to have lemons first. And we know that if 2020 taught us anything, it's that the whole world can change on a dime and everything can go sideways. Has there been a moment in your own lives where you're like, oh my gosh, that was a lemon. That was a brutal, brutal lemon. It could be personal. It could be a professional thing. It could be something we haven't even talked about before. But was there a moment where you're like, wow, how am I going to get through this? So,
yeah,
quite a few.
We kind of talked about this before, and really what comes to mind, which honestly, for me was a super low point that started as a high, which often happens.
Yeah.
You end up being disappointed by something that you are so excited about. But I became a partner in a restaurant concept 10 years ago or so.
Very cool.
It's called Melty Way. It's this gourmet grilled cheese restaurant, which when I heard that concept, I thought, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And there were two partners who had founded it, and I came on board right kind of after they had started it and became a partner and invested in it, and I handled the marketing side of it, designed the brand, and the look of the stores, and all of the media that we needed to design. And it was a great concept, but it was hampered by a few problems, and particularly the two founders just hated each other.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
And I was the guy in the middle playing peacemaker, and it was so distracting. They grew the company. I mean, I was part of it, but we grew the company too fast initially, and we didn't have
the infrastructure
systems, the infrastructure. We didn't have everything dialed in and defined well. And it grew too fast for its own good. And then it was hampered by just all of these
toxicity.
Toxic partnership issues. Eventually, those two guys left the company. And so I was kind of holding the bag. I had invested the most. I still believed in this brand, but I'm like, I'm not a restaurant guy, but I suddenly had to become a restaurant guy. Yeah. And it was rough. We had to close locations. There were times when, I was pumping money in to keep it going and thought, boy, is this going to lead to bankruptcy? And, it was seriously some of the most stressful times that I can remember ever in my life.
What years was this?
So, it started in about 2012 and, it really about 4 years in is where it was really bad. Mm. So eventually, I just, and I had my agency work, which was great. And I had to keep that going. So this was a part-time effort, but it was taking so much time. Yeah. And it was just draining me. And I just remember multiple times going, okay, do you believe in this? Having to kind of hit the reset button and go, okay, why did you get into this to begin with? Mm. Are those things that motivated you to be a part of it, do they still exist? Are they still valid? And I'm like, yeah, they are. The food's amazing. Yeah. The brand is really fun. And so I just kept at it slowly over time, tweak, figuring things out, how to make things more efficient, how to make things better. And eventually really got it to a place where, it was a profitable enterprise. And, for how difficult it was and how like really low I felt at times, it was important to me. I've always said that life is so cyclical in the way that we do things. I kind of compare it, this is cliche, but to being on your mission and things are be going well in an area that you're in, you feel like you're having success and you get transferred and you have to start over.
Yes.
And I learned, probably halfway into the mission, what an opportunity a transfer was. Like, okay, I have to start over again, but I am going to grow. Mm-hmm. I'm going to learn things. I'm going to have a challenge that I have to learn how to tackle and be successful at. And that really taught me the value of hitting the reset button at times and saying, okay, I got to reframe things, reset, tackle it from
fresh eyes, new perspective.
With fresh eyes and what can I do? How can I work the problem? How can I solve it? Mm-hmm. And not giving up. And so that really came into play there. And now, just this last year, we launched franchising, and
no way,
it's going great.
It's going great.
It's growing, and we will be opening new locations across the country.
Are you the sole owner now because the other two left, or did you bring other people on?
I basically, there's some fractional ownership.
Since we're Flinch, I obviously am going to have half of it.
That's right.
Obviously. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
But and that's applied, as well in agency work. That kind of stuff goes up and down, and you just have to buckle down and realize, okay, work the problem, figure it out, reset and do better.
It's interesting as you were speaking, I was thinking two experiences came from my mission as well, because I served in Australia, but it was a Chinese speaking mission.
Wow.
So I only served in two areas. That was all because our areas were so huge. We were isolating just the Chinese folks. And the exact thing happened to me where I'd been in the one area for like 6, 7, 8 months, and it was going really well, fine, like momentum. And then like, okay, you're out. You got to go to another area. And I'm like, and I remember this other area had like nothing going on. And I remember being like, you have like that feeling of discouragement, like, okay, I guess there's nothing here, But then, like you said, hit that reset button and looking at it from a different point of view and different perspective. It was interesting because the only time I ever had a Melty Way was when you catered for Sally Carmichael.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, where's this food from? And you're like, oh, yeah, this is my company. I'm like, what? Dave, can I be a founder? Anyway, no, it was awesome. So I'm so glad to hear that that's the case. What's interesting about this pivot story, this lemonade story, though, is it took a long time. It wasn't like an overnight, I have a new idea and it's going to immediately go.
Right.
And I think what I'd love to know is what kept you pushing on that new path when you were in the wilderness. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a little bit of kind of the concept of, being thrown into the deep end, and you have no choice, sink or swim, right? And so when I was kind of left alone with it, when the partners left who were kind of the experts, I had to, I'm just like this designer guy, this creative who had to kind of figure out how to do it. And I mean, I failed a ton. Like it just became, do you believe, it's kind of what I mentioned. It's just like, do you still believe in this?
Yeah.
If I hadn't believed in it, there would have been ways to get out. But I'm like, this is terrible right now. This is so hard.
Yeah.
But do I stick with it?
Yeah.
Do I stick with it? Do I believe in it? And I did, and I still do. And it really, you have to kind of just check in with yourself and make sure that, you believe what you're doing, because, we hear a lot, like in the personal development area, about stick-to-itiveness and not quitting. And I think there's value in real, honest evaluation of what you're doing. Yeah. And sometimes quitting and moving on to something else is the best.
Is the right choice.
Thing. Yeah. But I always, every time I checked in on this and hit that reset button, it was always like, no, you can make this work.
You can make this work.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the idea of taking that reset. I think you need to.
I think there's a big misconception too that okay, so now it's time to abandon this and move forward.
Yeah.
Is some sort of failure when that's the equity that brought you to this place now. Like it's like it's not it is that's the next place forward.
Yeah.
So often that's the case.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Daryn? Was there any moments that stuck out at you you're like, oh man, that was a lemon?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like so many that I feel like, it's odd to even isolate one, because as I look back over my career, I can see so many common elements to so many of them. We talk about the building equity thing. I've been self-employed for most of my life and working as an independent filmmaker. The reality is that things aren't going to go the way you think. Things are going to go the way you plan them. It's true no matter what, but especially in that space, like I do feel like I'm in that enchanted forest, like I'm sort of in a vacuum, especially early in my career, because I was like trying to write screenplays. Like, how do you become a writer? Well, you declare yourself a writer and you write things and you show it to them, and now you're a writer, I was trying to write screenplays. I was trying to do these different things. And so often it was me just, wondering, like, am I just spinning my wheels, battling all those things. And it was a constant, like battle against that. And there were a lot of elements along the way that got me through. But as I look back, I feel like, it's interesting to me as I look back over my career. I can remember that no matter where I have been at my career, I've always been building towards something in terms of working on some project, pushing some boulder up a mountain.
Yes.
I always had some sort of thing I was pursuing, even if I was working on day-to-day stuff. And not all of those things. Some of those things came to fruition. Some of them didn't, but they all built equity. They've all built what they're supposed to do. And so, at the time, you have this mindset of, I'm working on this thing. I hope it develops in this thing. And if it doesn't, it's going to be a failure. And then 20 years later, it's something completely different than you ever expected, because that led somewhere else.
Yeah.
And my life is full of things like that. And I feel like sometimes it's a matter of, here's where I get philosophical, right? Like it's a matter of not turning a lemon into lemonade as much as just letting that lemon become lemonade. Realizing like that, like this is the way forward with that, and you got to allow this to become what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Which is another thing too, is I feel like the things that have really blossomed in my life that I've worked on also had a common element of, I always met the right partner. It's certainly true with Flinch. I tell Katie, my wife, and all that I have a work husband. I really mean that. I'm still fortunate in that way to have such
you guys are very cute together for sure.
You have a balanced dynamic.
It's a magical relationship.
It really is.
But but there are the partnerships, and it feels like alchemy, where you take those two pieces of lead and somehow you produce a little piece of gold. And and as I look back, I think like my participation in those projects was essential in that. In many times I helped build them. I was the one who sort of launched the idea into something other people got involved in, and other times I'd written the project and other things. But I realized, my contribution was essential. However, it was nothing without the other contributions. Like it actually had nothing tangible about it without these other contributions that were essential as well. You know, and then it becomes and many times that just becomes something totally different than you thought it was going to be. And
I love that. I mean, and I love what you just said about like building equity in something and how it might not be what you expect it to be, but it is something. I remember,
especially and that's the other thing is like, if it's not going to work out, if you're doing something you love, and you're working with people that you value and respect, you've got that. If you're creating something you're proud of, you've got that, and that's all you can really have any sort of semblance of control. It's like, did you do comedy sports? I mean,
I didn't do comedy sports, but I do comedy for sure.
It's like with stand-up, I'm sure, with Daryn's and comedy sport, on the Daryn's and comedy sports, it wasn't last time I made that, like, I'm glad I love doing this because I'm not really getting paid anything. I can't justify from an hours per salary standpoint, but I do this because I love doing it, you know, and so therefore, if comedy sports like blew up tomorrow, I'd still, I still have all, well, that's a terrible announcement. I realize that doesn't really work. You know what I'm saying?
Comedy sports is safe.
No, comedy sports. No, I just mean in terms of like, it wasn't like, there was no destination to it. There was no like, I'm doing this so I can get somewhere. It's like, I'm doing this because I'm so happy doing this.
I love that you just said that too, because it's like, if you're always looking for something as it's going to lead me to another destination, then you might be very disappointed. But
I feel like all I found is like, I'm just managing new problems, new goals, new expectations.
You really are.
Yeah.
I remember I made this movie once called The Last Man's on Earth. Okay. And it's funny enough, I actually rewatched it and I was like, I found it funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a fun movie. We had like a $50,000 budget. Okay.
Nice. Not bad.
Yeah. And we spanned 3 different states shooting this movie. It was just the biggest, craziest film that I don't even know why I did it. Like, so much cast, so many locations. Everything that you should not do when you make a movie, we did when we made this movie. And we put so many hours, so much time. We shot the ending 3 different times because we hated it the other 2 times. And like, I could just go on and on with all the stories that we had with it. And in the end, it did not do anything. Like it just sat on a shelf somewhere. And like the distribution company that we worked for, they were working with like some people that were acquiring certain things, and those guys were corrupt. And in the end, we made maybe $1,000. It might have made $1,000. And I could have looked at that and been like, man, what a freaking disappointment, you know? Mm-hmm. But I can't look at it like that, because every time I look at that movie, all I can think about are the incredible memories I made with my friends. Mm-hmm. And I remember in high school, I had a buddy named Mike Earl, and he was always like, let's make some memories, guys. Let's make some memories. You know, you always know like a kid like that, right? And he would we would make these homemade like movies in high school where we'd like go VCR to VCR editing, you know, like old school style, right? Anyway, tragically after high school, he passed away. He had an accident, he passed away. But now I look at those videos, those movies that we made, I'm like, oh my gosh, those are priceless. Yeah. You can't, because you catch him in the most joyous state ever, right? And I look at that movie, The Last Man's on Earth, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this movie just represents joy. It's what this is. It like, yes, it wasn't a financial success, but wow, the equity we built in it like is going to last lifetimes, in my opinion.
That's awesome.
And dare I say, your journey with the movie isn't over either. That's to this day, like those relationships you have, and they may bear out fruit later in life. That's like, wow, this weird movie that didn't pay off sure is paying off still for me. You know?
Well, what's interesting is I am still really good friends with like the writers, the producers. We still work on some stuff together, and it's just a beautiful thing. So but my life and the way I approach things have definitely changed from when I was a 20-year-old thinking, okay, I gotta make this movie, this is gonna be successful, and this is gonna lead to this. And I almost look at it in terms of like, who are the relationships I have right now? And am I really working with the people that I care about? I don't really care about being like these huge, big blockbuster movies. I care more about like these relationships. And that's one of the reasons why.
Oh, you care. You want both.
I do want both. No, but you know what's funny is like I left LA for that reason. Because LA, I was, you know, getting some good roles, you know, like after Silicon Valley's Criminal Minds came out and all these different things, casting directors were calling me or my agent were asking for me. And I was like, okay, this is great. And I felt empty inside. I'm like, why am I feeling empty inside? And I was getting these auditions and stuff, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, something feels off. What's missing, you know? And like the more I did some soul searching, I realized like, I'm not making movies with my friends. Like, that's why I got into this industry. Like, and it became too political. It became too much like, how many followers do you have? How many this do you have? Or how many that do you have? Or whatever it was. And at the end, I was like, the joy of doing this suddenly got robbed from me. So I remember when I came back to Utah, because I was on The Outpost, if you guys remember that show. Yeah. So while I was doing that, I was like, I wonder what the scenery in Utah would look like if I came back. because I left because there just wasn't enough work for an Indian actor. And then Vicky, who I think you guys are both repped by, she was like, Sharon, if you come back, we will put you to work, and she has. But what was
Dave and Daryn keep asking?
Keep asking them. They're gonna put you in UCCU spots. It's gonna be great. But what was cool though was not only do I work way more as an actor here in Utah, I'm doing it with the people that I really care about. And so I love it. Like it feels so good because the equity is being built in the exact right way. It's the ones where I can like look at these movies and be like, it wasn't just fun. It was the memories that I've created. Like I still hang out with these friends. And I think that's super important.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I love to discuss, and I want to ask you guys as we're kind of wrapping things up, joy is something that I feel is definitely a choice. It's something that can happen to people. Like if you make like certain conscious choices, and I know that a lot of people's joys were robbed from them during 2020. A lot of, people had lost their jobs and all kinds of different financial ruin. How do you two find joy, especially in the last couple of years? How have you found joy in your life personally?
Well, I mean, speaking of COVID, like I feel like I'd be remiss just not to express gratitude for how much easier it was for me than so many other people. Right.
Yes.
And that's a source that was always from the beginning a source of great comfort to me because I work at home primarily, and we have clients we work with, we were already working with remotely, and one of them being UCCU, which we could not have more wonderful relationship with, and they were an essential business. So when this was happening at the beginning, I quickly was able to realize like there were trials, there were challenges, there were some big scary things, but yet, like I'm not out of a job. I don't have to leave the house. My children are 3 years old and 6 years old. So they're at an age where we can kind of, we didn't have answers. We didn't have a lot of information at that point. So we can kind of insulate them, help them feel safe here, and right from the beginning, we thought, we will be able to weather this storm. Even our mortgage had options for like, you can pause, you can pause your mortgage payments. And we were able to calculate this will be tough, but that's all. It's, in terms of what we're looking at right now, where so many people were in chaos, were suddenly thrust into their lives, chaos and fear. And we feel like, we have what we need here. And we're very fortunate. So like sometimes sometimes you're lucky. Sometimes things work.
Yeah. It was interesting to see what was going on. And I felt, at times I felt a little guilty. I'm like, not a lot has changed because the way that we work is now, and it has to be, was the way that we were working already. And of course, we were affected. There were, we took some financial hits to the business, but like Daryn said, it was survivable. And we know, my gosh, how many people took way bigger hits. And,
I never felt unsafe. I never felt insecure, and that was everything.
Yeah.
One thing, I love the concept of joy. It's always been one of my favorite gospel principles, if I can go there.
Please go.
Adam fell, the men might be, and men are, they might have joy. That's why we're here. Adam, said that because of their transgression, their eyes were opened, and now they see that in this life,
they can have joy.
Because, we've talked about, there's, the idea that, joy is for later. We got to work it out here. But specifically, we're told joy is for now as well, for now and later. And I love that idea. That was something I really discovered when I was on my mission. It became something that I love to teach people. And during the pandemic, one thing that gave me joy was I figured out a way to become more regimented and build routines into my life that really helped me, that make things predictable, but also give me a way to reflect. So I get up at 5:30 every morning.
Amazing. That's incredible.
I go downstairs and this is, cheesy, but here we go. I get in the hot tub.
Okay.
I have a hot tub.
That's
I sit
awesome.
there. I look at the stars because it's still dark.
Yeah.
The moon, and I plan the day. I reflect, I meditate, I pray, and spend about a half hour doing that, kind of easing into the day, and then sit down in my office and start working.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of things like that I figured out that really worked well for me, and they were easier to figure out, I think, during the pandemic when things slowed down.
Yeah.
But they have helped me to kind of still stay slowed down in certain ways to not be too stressed. And I'm really grateful for that. I think if you can find routines that you can follow and give you some discipline and structure, that it can be super helpful, especially in those times when things go awry.
Yeah. Speaking of structure, one thing that was very obvious to me about Dave when we were forming Flinch is that Dave was really interested in forming Flinch around, this was to serve his life, meaning he wasn't living for Flinch. Flinch was a vehicle to support himself financially so he can pursue his dreams and spend time with his family and put all that stuff first. And that's where my head was at. And it seemed like that was kind of a balance that was achievable. And I didn't become a parent until after Flinch formed, and so all through Flinch, I've been able, with some structure and security. I work from home where, in my 40s as a parent, where my kids are, where I can be present as my kids are growing up. Yeah. I also got diagnosed with adult ADHD in my 40s, which anyone who's had a similar experience can tell you that gives you a chance to look back over your entire life from a different perspective, which can be incredible and horrifying and wonderful and all those different things, and it's just been such a wonderful time to be able to, like, as I've learned to be more present, learn to kind of value what was important to me in life, to have a partnership with Dave that said, I pretty much quit every day at 5 p.m., as a rule, unless I can't. And it's because I don't want to. I want to see my kids. I'm in love with my wife. It's all, it's all right here, right now. And these little girls are growing up, and so, Dave sees the same. Dave has 4 girls. I have 2. It's interesting. A lot of the parallels, but are fascinating to me. But and for me, that's been a big part of my joy we actually have a system in place and a structure where I'm creative for a living. I get to be creative for a living, and while being present at home, with my family. And I just feel like, I don't know how I could be more great, that. It definitely brings me joy. I'm definitely very grateful for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I love this topic of joy as well. So I go to this mid-singles ward, and my bishop and I we're really, really good buddies. And we were having a conversation, and he says, Sharon, it's so sad because so many people are just so depressed here. They're really, really depressed. And I said, well,
here in Utah? Or
here in
the church? In the group,
and it was this ward in Provo. Yeah. And I said, well, why? What is it that makes them depressed? And he says, well, they feel that God has let them down. They feel like the church has let them down. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they said, well, they just were taught that if you do X, Y, and Z,
this will happen.
This is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And you keep the commandments, you'll be blessed. And they have the idea of we're gonna be married, we're gonna have kids, and all the stuff that is painted, right?
I processed all this. Oh yeah,
right. And then it didn't happen, or it happened and then it got ripped away. They got a divorce, or weird things happen, and so as a result of it, they're very bitter. They're very disappointed. And it's so interesting because I'm the opposite of those thoughts, right? I mean, sometimes we in the church, we have a thing called fast and testimony meeting the first Sunday. You go and you share your feelings and everything like that. And sometimes I call it fast and depressimony meetings because I'm like, oh no, here we go, And so I suddenly feel like this inner voice being like, Sharon, I need you to get up there, right now, share some joy, do something, do whatever, And I'm like, okay. But it's interesting because it all goes back to a certain level of expectations not being met, right? But one of the things I've learned, in the scriptures and stuff, is joy for me is not about expectations being met. It's about a relationship. It was really always about a relationship. And if you have this relationship with God, you could be happy no matter what crazy things were going down, I mean, yes, there'd be very unpleasant things, and you've seen that in the Bible and all that stuff,
and
right?
Some people have a fundamentally, biologically more difficult time being joyous and happy than other people, to be fair.
Absolutely.
It's not equal, for sure. Circumstances and biology.
You're absolutely right? And so I love the idea of what you suggested regarding routines. I think routines are really great because in one capacity, that's one thing that you can do, that you can control right now. And so that's one of the things that we say, even if it's something super simple, hey, just this morning, practice just getting out of bed. Don't just sit in bed and looking at social media. Just you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just get out of bed, and simple things like that you can be tasked to. And I love the idea of you getting up super early, hot tub, meditate. I think that's amazing because it's hey, this is a chance for you to go inward and reflect and think of how you can create.
I also feel if you can't be happy and push forward, maybe there's something to be said for, okay, then forgive yourself for feeling bad. Allow yourself that like, I feel this way, like this is how I feel. And if I'm feeling better, like maybe just look at that and feel like it's okay to feel better. Maybe like, I'm, like, it's okay. I feel this way about this and that because these things that happened to me. And that's the way I feel. Like, that's okay. And that can help you kind of get to that place of like, it's okay. Like I am better and I am fine. Like there's a certain logic. Like I don't have to be happy about this. Right.
You don't
now.
have to. You don't have to. You
don't
have to fight something. If you can allow yourself to feel the grace of like,
allow yourself to live in that space of like, I'm not happy about this right now, and I can just acknowledge that and look at it. And
that's awesome. And I love like those suggestions because that I think are the keys to like living in a very unpredictable world, which is what we are all living in right now. Yeah. In a way, I feel like I'm very grateful to have been an actor because all of the unpredictability of being an actor has like prepared me for like living in a world of unpredictability. Yeah. I know I had friends that were like so stressed out. I'm like, just another day, guys. World shut down. We're going to be fine. Well, everything's going to work out.
May never work again.
Yeah.
Man, isn't that fun?
That's great.
There's something to be said too. I love the idea of, there are times when things do work out and you do have a success here and there, and there is reason to feel joy because something great happened. And I think it's important to take the time and allow yourself to have that joy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we're so concerned with, okay, what's the next thing? There's a concept that I love called blissful dissatisfaction.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Right.
Yeah,
so it means like you celebrate, you take the time to be blissful about the great things in life, the things that maybe the baseline things that you're grateful for, unique things that happen that are like a win for you.
Yeah.
Celebrate that. But have that little bit of dissatisfaction in that like, I'm going to use this and I'm going to move on to the next step and do even better. So you're not, you do take the time to I don't know if you want to say pat yourself on the back, but celebrate those wins that you have and use them to spring on to the next thing.
I'm gonna go I couldn't agree with that more, and I'm gonna go the other direction again because that's why we make great partners. Because like there's like that's so true, and there's also I love the idea of practicing joy, and what I mean by that is practicing feeling joy in the everyday mundane moments, because that is actually the show. That is actually your life. Like when I'm reading a bedtime story to my daughter, that's actually the headline event of the day, not the TV show I'm waiting to watch. Like if I confuse that, the joy will not follow in as much abundance, and so and I really feel like right now, like if we took a moment right now and said, let's practice feeling the joy of the moment we have, the three of us doing this podcast.
Yeah.
You can already feel it. It's almost like you don't have to practice feeling it. You have to practice allowing yourself, remembering to feel it. Let's take a moment to breathe and let myself feel the joy of being in this room with these people. And it's incredible. You can feel it immediately.
I think what's amazing is like, sometimes we have so many, we think we're living life, but we're not. What we're doing is we're living a narrative that's playing in our heads.
Sure.
We're not necessarily living life. We're in some story, I'm like, oh my gosh, when did I get out of this movie and I got into this other movie, right? But when you figure out a way, and I mean, this kind of goes to like Buddhist principles of like, surrendering and being mindful and relaxing and clearing your head of those narratives. And I often try doing this consciously. I forget about it. Sometimes when I'm driving, I try to make a conscious effort to see how hard I'm gripping the wheel.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if I'm gripping the wheel really tight, I'm in a narrative. I'm in some thing that's going on in my head.
I'll tense and I'll realize, I'm telling a story.
I'm telling what story am I in? And wait, how did I get to State Street? It's this crazy thing because like driving a car is like my perfect time to zone out and to something.
I have wonderful driving experiences.
And then when I'm like, okay, hang on, let me just practice clearing the narratives. So I started doing this a little bit, just practicing clearing the narratives and just being mindful of like, hey, how does this wheel feel underneath my fingers? Oh, how do my shoulders feel right now? And I practice driving very, very, very presently, meaning like no narratives are in my head. I'm just on the road. And it is so joyous. I'm telling you,
we
you guys
could do a whole podcast about this because I've told Katie, my wife, like it sounds like frou-frou and pretentious, but but I've keyed into a driving ritual. It is, and for it's just like because like I never really appreciated how much I could accomplish by just be
Just be.
Just be. Like and if you think you can keep thinking, that's fine. And we catch yourself, just be, Yeah.
And so what I've also done to do that is I purposely drive a different way home.
Interesting.
Because
like
then when you drive a different way home, you're like, okay, this is new, this is fresh.
I avoid the freeway as much as humanly possible because I find that it enriches my life in huge ways. And I try to, when I have the time, push the button on the destination GPS to take me off freeways. It's usually like 5 or 10 minutes difference. And I feel like, oh yeah, there's a joy to my life that was added through that.
It's a very, very interesting thing. But I'll tell you, like there was this moment, I've had this happen a couple of times, especially when I'm driving, I notice it. Everything feels brand new. That's the only way I can describe it. Everything feels so fresh and so brand new, even though I've driven this road a million times.
Because that's how you're supposed to be experiencing it, but you're always zoned out.
But you're in the narratives, right? So always have to ask yourself, like, hey, am I in the narrative or am I actually living life like with a clear head and being very present?
Are you in your own matrix? Or are you actually here?
And then sometimes you'll end up in Tooele and you didn't even know how you got there. And
yes.
Of course, Tooele is just joyful.
It's so joyful.
So,
But if you solved all your problems, then you're, couldn't be happier to be in Tooele in that one moment.
Exactly. In that one moment. Awesome. So, okay, 2 more questions for you and then we'll wrap up. We talked about joy. What are the things right now that are the most fearful in your life? What brings you the most fear?
Ooh,
I mean,
a good one.
Yeah. I would say this is always it's the financial collapse of my livelihood, being able to take care of my family, especially now that I'm in my late 40s and I have young children at home. Yeah. I'm very mindful of, I want the support system in place indefinitely, and I'm at a stage of my career where it's like, I don't have time to build that. Like this is what I'm building is what it is, and I always fear like and it's an irrational paranoia. It's that egotistical, like that, like they're going to get you, eventually,
Well, I mean, it's the imposter syndrome that's always creeping in, and you're just like, someone's gonna figure out that I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I read Michael J. Fox mentioned that in his book, and it's so common. And I have to have an actual like nest egg of a certain amount. So there's a logic. I can like when the anxiety monkey comes dancing around my soul, I could say take a break because I have the numbers, I have the data, and you could like everything could blow up tomorrow, and we would be fine for this amount of time. And so therefore, logically, you can't ruin my life today. But hey, welcome. Have a seat. It's that responsibility to other people. I mentioned this Melty Way restaurant thing, and we just launched franchising. Yeah, and it's interesting. I had a meeting last week with probably about 7 or 8 people from around the country who came to check out the concept and who want to open a Melty franchise. And this is something that I mean, not in a vacuum, but I've in large part built. And I felt such a responsibility. I felt so humbled. Like, these people see this as a great thing for their livelihood and their future. Yes. I have got to deliver for them. And that is a huge fear for me right now, that like, I again, this is something that I was not trained for. I'd learned how to get it where it is now in the School of Hard Knocks, but I have to deliver when I give this to them. So that, I mean, you talk about that fear, that is top of mind right now. Yeah. I get that, like responsibility to other people, man. Yeah. Like that's a tricky one for sure. Cause you're like, because if you feel like their needs aren't met, you're like, oh crap, what have I done? We're all American men in our 40s. It's amazing that we feel programmed to, have this anxiety. No, it's so true. Yeah. I love it. So the last question for you guys, everything that you've learned with all of your lemons and to lemonade, everything, if you could go back in time and talk to the younger Daryn Tufts or the younger Dave Nibley, the one that just got off his missions and whatnot, what advice would you give them? Mostly like, it's fine, and that like truly follow what you love. Like, be smart, go to school, do all the things, be responsible, prepare for everything, but then truly follow your bliss. Like, and the ADHD diagnosis was a little bit of an indicator, because I realized that my ADHD diagnosis is connected to my career as a writer, and that and if I had known that earlier, I might have seen that as a differentiation in me that I didn't see, and it might have affected me. And I really believe in not playing the game of looking back what ifs, but I truly believe that it's useless. That like, I'm probably much better off than I would have been otherwise. Like, I truly believe, like that game in life is a pointless game to play. But I tell younger people the same thing, which is pursue what you love, because it might not work out, but so might not anything else. And if you get a job that you don't love and it doesn't work out, it's not going to work out. And if you do this, it doesn't work out, you're going to sleep at night better, knowing you tried.
Yes.
And again, and these are the things that build equity. Your job somewhere else, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. Like it truly is, I'm glad that we have structured our life that we can have some stability for our families. And it's like, this was a path we had in common, but yeah, I would say, like, if you are doing what you love and you're responsible, like, consider the lilies of the field. You'll be fine. It'll all, it'll be taken care of. Build things, do things, pursue your dreams, and be kind, help support other people. Like, that's part of the equity, lift everyone up, and you're going to lift yourself up too along the way.
Oh, I love that.
I love that. I almost don't want to say anything. That's so good.
Well, I'm not perfect at doing it. I mean, that's what I believe. I mean,
what came to mind when you said that is, I think back to my younger self, and I think one of my weaknesses has always been, I'm a procrastinator.
Same.
It is in me. And I fight with it all the time. And
it's called executive dysfunction, so it's not shameful.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's a very respectable term.
Yeah.
I feel like this. Oh gosh, I'm throwing out all these like personal development cliches, but there's this concept of eating your frogs first. Have you heard that?
No, I have not.
So Mark Twain said, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
When you get up, first thing that you should do every day is eat a frog.
Okay.
Because that'll be the worst thing that you do for the whole day.
Okay.
Everything else is going to be
so great.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And I wish all through my career that I would have been better at doing that, at not putting off those things that are harder, at doing those first. It's something I still struggle with and really push I have to be very intentional. And I do that in my little morning hot tub sessions.
I've heard it likened to, like, it's a mosquito, and like you could kill the mosquito, but you don't. And next time the mosquito's gotten bigger, and if you don't, and harder to kill, and eventually you have to slay a dragon, and you could have just killed the mosquito.
Oh my gosh, I love that. It is such. It's so true, and that I know I can specifically look to that trait that I have. And say, if I were able to really tweak that, make that less of a thing for me, even just a little bit, things would have been easier.
So, it's an interesting thing. And this is why a very real experience happened in my life just the last couple of weeks that has it's dramatically altered me. And I never thought it would, right? My mom just got remarried. She got remarried on the 23rd of January, which is like the day after my birthday. And she has had her first marriage to my dad was an arranged marriage. That's how they did in India. Wow. So they knew each other for maybe an hour before they got married. Wow. Like it was wild, right? So there wasn't really love in the home like you would see. Yeah. Like, I mean, it was just more of an arranged situation. Like that's just
partnership.
That's just partnership. That's what you do. So I didn't know that affected me, but it did. I just never considered that would have affected me as a kid.
Of course.
But not seeing that type of like parental love with each other. My mom's second husband was, she really loved him, but he had a lot of, unfortunately he struggled a lot with some mental disorders, and it made it so he just could not function in life. And so it was very traumatic, and it was very tough, and it was very, very toxic. The relationship it ended poorly. And she had sworn off all dating and marriage and all this stuff, right? And I remember I'm really close to my mom, and her energy always seemed kind of low when it came to talking about these type of things. But somehow through amazing miracles, she said she was sitting in her friends had convinced her to go on some sort of dating online dating app or something like that, some Indian app or whatever. And she got on there and she got scammed by a couple of people, and she's like, I'm so done. I'm so sick of all of this. Why are you even putting this on there? So she said she was at church crying during sacrament meeting, why God, why? 20 years I've been single and all this stuff. And during that plea, a message came in from this guy that she's not married to, And so she met him in March of last year. And she was giddy as she was talking to me about him, and I'm like, what in the world? This is weird. This is my mom, And anyway, they got married, and I see them all the time, and they're constantly laughing. They're always laughing about something, And I can't even tell you how healing that is for me. It was the weirdest thing.
But how you didn't know it was even there in you.
I didn't even know. I had no idea I needed that.
I feel like in your 40s, they used to call this midlife crisis. I feel like all the checks for the things that you haven't paid for yet come due around a certain time in your life. Like, well, the check's due now. The meal's done. It's like, oh, I didn't even know I forgot I ordered this. You know? And it's like, and that's it all comes around.
And it's a weird, like, energetic thing that, like, but like just seeing that. It healed me. Like it healed like a kid version of me. Isn't that weird?
No.
And like I was just like thinking about that. I'm like, wow, like this is so profound. And but I feel like I'm just like extra joyful, like just like this extra bit of like this lightness that I didn't even know. So that's why I think like it's not too late. It's not too late to like say, hey, you can fight off that procrastination spirit or whatever it is. It's never too late because
it's literally always now.
It's always is always now, right? And I mean, you look like in the scriptures, you talk about how Jesus lives in the eternal now, right? Past, present, future are all right now. So it's like just by doing this, there's like a younger version of you that's healed, and hopefully like a older version of you that's also feeling the benefits of the healing of your actions in the hot tub right now, right? So I think like
if there's no time, you're in the hot tub right now. Dude.
You are literally we are literally in a hot tub time machine. That's what this is, you know. Guys, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I always love like interviewing, I love interviewing friends, but I love this podcast because not only do I get to hear about your lives, but I always feel like I'm coming away learning something really profound about myself and about what helps us to all tick. And I love that we got more philosophical towards the end because I think that's really what it's all about, right? Like all these things, like the acting and the producing, all that stuff is fun. But at the end of the day, it's about these incredible connections that we're having. So thank you both for being on.
Thank you for having us. And so like, awesome. Hey, there's maybe this is part of the reason you came back from LA. Like you're doing great things.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's UCCU, man. Of course.
This podcast I think is awesome, and it's so cool that Lemonade Stand.
I know you're supposed to come back from LA because you're here.
I'm here.
Right in front of you.
I'm right here. Yeah.
You're so good at it.
No, I appreciate that. Well, thank you guys so much, and have a great day.
All right.
Okay, thanks so much for listening to the Lemonade Stand podcast, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use to be alerted when we release new episodes. We'd also love to hear your feedback in the reviews, and if you or someone you know has an awesome Lemonade Stand story, please reach out to us on social media and let us know. Thanks so much, and have a great day.